The history of cricket broadcasting dates back to the earliest days of radio.
In the radio days, when life was okay, you knew that Bradman would save the day.
It was in the 1930s that ABC Radio first began its long association with cricket coverage, an era that was dominated by one man.
And he's our Don Bradman. Now I ask you, is he any good? Our Don Bradman. As the batsman, he can surely on the wood.
The 1930s also saw the start of a career in radio broadcasting that was to span over half a century and more than 200 tests.
And now the big fella moving in. Yes, and there it is. At 4 to Hutton as he whips that one down towards third man, and Bradman moves in, and the first to congratulate Len as he comes back for that second run. He needn't bother, it's there.
Alan McGilvray soon became the voice of cricket on ABC Radio and vividly recalls his first experiences behind the microphone.
Well, the year then was 1934. Can you remember your first broadcast for the ABC?
I do, in a Brisbane studio, putting me in an office with a red light and a green light. And they said, when the green light's showing, you talk. When the red light goes on, you stop. And I don't know how long I spoke, but I did it. I must have repeated myself dozens of times.
McGilvray was the voice behind the first descriptions of a test match played in England in what was to become known as the synthetic tests. Former General Manager of the ABC, Charles Moses.
On the eve of the 1938 Test Cricket Series, I have been asked to explain to you how the synthetic ball-by-ball descriptions are broadcast by the national stations. Let us follow the course of a typical message as received in the Commission's Sydney studios only a minute after the actual happening on the test ground in England. This cable is taken down in duplicate and immediately amplified by cricket experts who fill in details regarding field placements on model cricket fields for the commentator, whom you can now see broadcasting his description from the amplified cable information. As the shot is made, the effects man, who has in front of him a copy of the cable message, drops the needle on an effects record, and listeners hear the applause of the crowd as the shot reaches the boundary. And now, let us listen in.
Farms ball into Bradman. It's a short ball. Bradman moves back and pulls fiercely past square leg. Hutton running round from deep fine leg has no chance. The ball goes under the ropes for another 4. That's 4 more to Bradman, taking his score to 97, a typical Bradman shot, giving the fieldsman no chance of saving the boundary.
Following the war, Bradman continued his magnificent career, but in 1948 he faced his last ball in Test cricket.
And Holly pitches the ball up slowly and he's bowled. Bradman bowls Holly's not.
With Bradman's departure from the scene, the beginning of the 1950s saw the emergence of some bright new stars.
First ball, Miller comes back and cracks it hard into the covers. It's through the covers now. Watchbrook, Hutton is chasing it. The pass is Watchbrook. It goes out for 4. Betzer again to Miller. Miller cracks the next one. It's through again. Another 4. Now a very deep field as Hutton is left down deep in cover. As Betzer bowls to Miller. Short. This one's short and he goes through. And I think it's another 4. Past Watchbrook, it's 4 again.
In 1961, Australia and the West Indies produced the first tied test in history. ABC commentators Clive Harburg and Johnny Moyes described the closing stages.
Riots skies him. 3 of them, 4 of them getting under it. Cam High gets it and it's not. It's not. 4 of them converged on the ball. Ball tipped in off the mark. Goes to Mickiff. Mickiff pulls him high into the outfield. 4 runs. No, it won't get to the fence. They're going for the 3, though. Trout slides his bat behind the line. He's flying for it, and he's out. Run out. Run out. Run out. Ball will bowl decline. And here's the single that wins the match for Australia. He's out. He's run out. Run out. Here comes the sound down. Well, no, it's a tie.
The 1970s was a turbulent decade for cricket. It began with the controversial 7th Test between Australia and England in 1971, as Alan McGilvray explains.
It was a short pitch ball. It wasn't a bouncer that snowballed a Jenner that hit him and flattened him. He was down on the ground. And then everything broke loose with Illingworth going up to umpire Rowan and pointing the finger at him and telling him he should do this and this. And Rowan, a very quiet fellow, just replied to Illingworth by saying, "Look here, Mr. Illingworth, there's someone out here bowling bouncers, and I can tell you something, it's not me." Well, that was one of the hilarious things that happened of that very difficult time. But Snow was sent down to the boundary. I don't know why he was sent him right down to the fence, but he went right onto the fence, and then the spectator grabbed him by the sleeve, I think it was, and dragged him about a foot towards him. And that caused Illingworth to go up and talk to Snow. I imagine he said, "What happened?" And then they said, "Let's go." And they walked off the field, and as they did, cans and bottles flew on the ground, not aiming at anyone. They'd all gone then, but they just tossed everything they could over.
The advent of Kerry Packer's World Series cricket led to a great deal of animosity between players, officials and the public. McGilvray was again in the thick of things in the West Indies in 1978.
ABC, Alan McGilvray here. The riot's still going on. There's a police are out in the middle, a lot of bottles still all over the ground. I don't know what Simpson's going to do, but the manager of Mr. Bennett's out there in the middle. Well, they're not in the middle. They're well away from where there's bottles and stones are being thrown. And the police surround them as they leave the ground. Now ball bottles are coming, and they took out the bottle off the ground, and they're being rained with bottles. But hundreds of bottles are pouring on there. The players are diving for shelter, and they're in undercover. Now, all we see on the field now are dozens and dozens of police. And as they run off the field, they were showered. And the umpire's been taken off under protection. This is not funny.
In 1985, the curtain came down on an illustrious broadcasting career.
He's everything to cricket. Cricket's everything to him, you know. The game is not the same without McGilvray.
I should mention, but I haven't got the time. There's a game of cricket going on, and it's far more important than me.
Behind the mic.
But I just say, finally, the score is 8 for 242. Thank you all. And the crowd here today who stood and gave me a great ovation. To you all, I thank you. I've enjoyed it. I have been a very lucky man in life to have cricket as my life, and it has been. So I think, Max, I'll leave it with you, and I'd like to leave the air now with those thoughts. So will you take over, and Mr. Marks, will you get someone else to continue the commentary? Thank you very much, everybody here today that gave me such a splendid ovation. Goodbye to you all.